Hey y'all, it's K-Bird Tweets, and this is Peace, Love, and Baseball. Hello, friends and fans, and welcome back to Peace, Love, and Baseball. This is the first episode of Peace, Love, and Baseball that is coming to you from my new home in South Jersey. That's right, New Jersey, baby. We made the move. We are here. We are officially moved in to our first home that we have owned. And yeah, we have been here for 2 weeks as of today. And let me just tell you, it has been the fastest, most whirlwind of a 2 weeks of my life. And obviously, there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's just gone by so fast. I cannot believe we've been here for 2 weeks. We are still getting settled. We did not hire movers. We used the U-Box like storage containers that we put most of our furniture and big things in. And then we just have one car because we lived in the city of Chicago, and we rented another like 10-foot U-Haul truck that we put the remainder of our furniture and some boxes in that my husband drove. And then I drove the car with all of the animals. And we drove here together 2 weeks ago. We broke it up into 2 legs. So we left on a Sunday morning. We stayed in Cleveland with my husband's family Sunday night. And then we arrived here on Monday evening. And woo! I tell you what, first of all, I wanted to give a little bit of background of why we moved, because I've had a handful of people inquire, and it's not super easy to explain on Twitter. It's also just maybe not as typical as you would expect. But I lived in Chicago for the past 10 years. Before I lived in Chicago, I lived in New York City. I am from Central Illinois, from the cornfields of Illinois, right in between Chicago and St. Louis. My dad is from St. Louis, so that's where I get my baseball fandom from. I am a St. Louis Cardinals fan. My dad's family is from St. Louis, and my dad spent some of his childhood in St. Louis before ending up in Central Illinois. So anyway, Central Illinois, born and raised in the cornfields, moved to New York City out of college to pursue music and theater, got to do some really cool stuff there, ended up in Chicago pursuing musical theater when I was cast in a Broadway and Chicago show, which I did there for a couple years. I ended up staying there because other professional opportunities presented themselves. And, cut to 10 years later, I'm working for a company that is based out of 5 different major cities, and I can work out of any of them. We, in particular, me and my husband had talked for years about wanting to be back on the East Coast, and that hopefully opportunities would align and we would end up on the East Coast. Ideally, we wanted to be closer to New York City. We did not want to live in New York City, but the idea of being within a day's driving distance, an hour or 2 from New York City, has always been super appealing to us for, potential theater opportunities and just being close to that culture and that urban opportunity that we know and love from the time that we both spent there, although that was before we knew each other. And my husband actually moved to Chicago to be with me. Again, I never really planned to be in Chicago either, just ended up there because of work opportunities and stayed there because of other work opportunities. So when we had the opportunity where I could work out of Philadelphia instead of Chicago, we thought maybe we start playing around with the potential here, especially now that we're in a position to buy a home. And so that is exactly what we did. We'd explored a lot of different areas. Initially, we were thinking more like north of Philadelphia, right in between Philadelphia and New York. Not only is that like further away from where I need to be for work when I do have to go into the office, but it's also really expensive. So we figured first home, we knew some people that lived in this area. We got some great recommendations, found an awesome real estate agent. So if you're going to move to South Jersey or Pennsylvania, you let me know. I got the hookup. And this area, just like based on vibes, kind of worked for us and was close to the things that we needed to be close to. So a big thing that people inquire about with us moving almost 900 miles away is like, do you have family here? We don't, but we didn't have family in Chicago either. I am from Illinois, but like my parents don't live anywhere near Chicago. They're like a good 3 hours south of Chicago. And my brother now lives in Wisconsin. My sister lives in London, England. And my husband's family is like all over the greater Cleveland area, which is even further away from where my parents live than Chicago is. So there's like no central area for our family, and no way that that could really like be a deciding factor. It just didn't make sense, especially when like my family is not necessarily settled and for sure going to stay anywhere long term, and who knows if anybody really is. So yeah, unfortunately, as important as that is, and as much as we would ideally like to be close to everyone, there wasn't an option to be close to everyone, and then also be in a place where our work would allow us to work and go after the opportunities that we're looking for. But the other thing I need to tell you about New Jersey is that it is absolutely beautiful. It is beautiful here. I was driving home from an appointment this morning, and I literally was sad that the drive was over because it was just so gorgeous. It was so relaxing. I literally would have taken that drive for a joy drive. It is beautiful and green. I mean, I know this is probably the most beautiful time of the year to be here, so that helps, but it's the most beautiful time of the year to be a lot of different places. And yeah, I mean, I just think it gets a bad rap from the rest of the country. We're nowhere near Newark, which I know is often referred to as the armpit of New York City, or New York, the armpit of New York, whatever. Nowhere near Newark. Haven't spent a lot of time in Newark. Not really interested in that. Not really concerned with that. But my point is, the rest of the state of New Jersey, a lot of the state of New Jersey, absolutely gorgeous. You've got so much greenery. You're near mountains. You're near the ocean. You're near all kinds of hiking trails. It's absolutely beautiful. And you're by, two of the biggest cities in the country, all kinds of stuff. And the other thing is that everyone here in New Jersey has no idea that the rest of y'all are talking smack about New Jersey. They have no idea because they're just here loving it. And I am now here with the rest of New Jerseyans loving it. And also, like, the East Coast is an amazing place to be for good baseball. And I have not actually been to Citizens Bank Park yet. I cannot wait to get there. As we speak, I am like less than 10 miles away from Citizens Bank Park outside of Philadelphia. Yes, you can live in New Jersey and be that close, 15 minutes from Citizens Bank Park. So that's where I'm at, and I haven't been there yet. I was gonna go this weekend, but it was literally 105 degrees, so decided to wait since there wasn't any team particularly in town that I really wanted to see the Phillies play. So we might go next weekend. Stay tuned. But I'm also like an hour and a half from Camden Yards and an hour and a half from Yankee Stadium and Citi Field, and even though I've been there, there's just a lot of opportunity to get to DC even, and even get to Boston, which I've been to Boston, but have not been to Fenway yet. So yeah, there's just so much good baseball content and opportunity for that. Not to mention, there are so many affiliates, the minor league teams and other leagues as well that are right around here. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting involved with that and just being a part of the greater baseball community that is thriving on the East Coast. We love it. So that is why we moved. That is where we are. And the episode today, okay, so we've done a lot of team feature episodes, and we're going to talk a little bit about that to round out this episode and give some forward motion to that as we're about halfway through the year here. But today's episode is going to share some perspective that is, based on my recent experience here of buying a home and moving, and the perspective that it has given me on, as you would think, putting together a roster for a baseball team. Here at Peace, Love, and Baseball, we love to create those full circle things of like things that we as normal people can relate to, our favorite players that we love to watch on TV, or, team presidents, owners of teams. Like, these are just people that, in all honesty, we can't relate to a whole lot. But I think when we take a look at it and kind of put it in perspective with things that more of us can relate to, it can be kind of interesting. So we're going to talk about buying a home versus building a baseball roster, and why a lot of similar compromises have to be made. And we'll round out today's episode by talking about our team features, which ones we've covered, which we've still got on the docket for the rest of this year. But hey, if you are here, if you are watching on the K-Bird Tweets YouTube channel, make sure you're subscribed, give it a like, leave a comment. There's going to be lots of things along the way that I ask for your commentary on and some feedback on. If you'd like to share, that would be awesome. You can follow me on Twitter at KBirdTweets. That is KBURD tweets for all the daily baseball content. And of course, if you are listening wherever you get your podcast, make sure that you are subscribed to Peace, Love, and Baseball. And if you would be so kind as to give it a rating and review if you are enjoying it, and maybe share it with a friend, because that is the best way to enjoy anything, is in the form of a good recommendation from one friend to another. Okay, let's get into kind of the basis of, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more from like building a home perspective, but building a home can mean like you're actually building it from the ground up, or you're building a home as in you're purchasing a home, all the things that you think about. There's a lot of the same things that you think about and pieces that you have to put together, whether or not the home is already standing or you're going to put it together and build it from the ground up. So the first kind of piece that we have to focus on when we're building a roster or a home is the rules and regulations that come with building a baseball roster as well as building a home. So for building a baseball roster, you've got the number of players you can have on the roster, right? You've got a max number of pitchers of certain types of players you can have. There's regulations around when you can option and trade players, all that kind of stuff. With a home, there are residential building codes. There are certain things with the plumbing and the electric and all of those things, and fire codes and stuff that have to be up to code, right? Those are specific rules. There are regulations a lot of times that have to be followed depending on the area that you live in. Some areas make you keep your grass cut a certain way or only allow you to put certain types of fences up. I'm not living in an area like that, but I have in the past, or I've rented in areas like that. So you know what I'm saying? It all falls in line under rules and regulations, whether it's a roster or a home that you're building. Second major thing that you've got to think about here is the structure of your roster or your home. So the structure of a roster is like, how many of each position are you going to have on the roster? The balance of player strengths. You know, do you have the balance of veteran players versus pre-arb players and everybody mixed in between? With a home, you're thinking about the structure of the home, meaning like how many beds, baths, the layout of the home, all that good stuff. Functional space, the structure. Construction is another big thing. That's the step we get to next, whether it's a roster or a home that you're building. So for roster construction, a lot of times you're thinking like superstars versus depth of the roster structure, right? You've got payroll. You've got the farm system is definitely a big part of the construction of your overall roster and how you're going to build it from the ground up. You've got offensive strategy versus defensive makeup. And the defensive makeup would include pitching in this regard, right? Defense and pitching. For home, similarly, on the other side of the coin here, two sides of the same coin, if you know what I'm saying, for construction, you've got like luxuries versus function would be the same as like superstars versus depth in some regard. You've got the price point of the home. You've got neighborhood. Then there's the utilities of the house versus the foundation of the home and the proximity of it from where you need to be, the climate, all things that you're considering with the construction of the home. So my thought here to directly compare these things is payroll for a roster and price of the home are both somewhat fixed, but flexible. Farm system and offensive strategy are comparable to neighborhood and utilities of a house. So the farm system, again, it takes like more of a long-term commitment to be able to build that up and invest in it the same way that it would a neighborhood. And your offensive strategy, while it can be changed and you can be a little bit more in flux with it and you can be a little bit more strategic with it, it's still something that you want to be pretty solid, and you're going to make other decisions around your lineup, your offensive strategy, right? The same as for your utilities of a house. One of the big things that we ran into and looking in a lot of different areas, and some of them were very rural areas that we were looking at, rural. That's a tough word to say. Let me know if you can say it better than I can. Anyway, a lot of what comes with that type of area is like a septic tank or oil heat, stuff like that, where, if you're in a different neighborhood, different part of town, you might be looking at, like, we actually have solar power now, and, conventional electric and gas, all that good stuff. Those are things that, like, you can change them up, can be flexible with it, but overall, you're going to look, for your number 3, 4, 5 hitters the same way that you're going to look for your gas, electric, and plumbing systems. You want them to be pretty solid. They can flex a little bit. They can be replaced. They can be serviced. They can evolve accordingly. But ideally, those are pretty solid decisions that you are making decisions around. Now, defensive makeup, on the other hand, going to be comparable to foundation, proximity, and climate. So it's more fixed and more things that I think are ultimately out of your personal control at times, right? Like the foundation of the home, like you're going to have to start from scratch if that's not something that's in good shape. The proximity of it to certain things, like you can't really change that. If you need to be close to your job, it's not like it's ever going to get closer to your job. And if you don't want it to snow, then you probably need to look for a home like in Florida instead of New Jersey. But the same with pitching and defense. Like you're going to get what you're going to get on paper. You know who Kyle Gibson is. You know who Lance Lynn is. But a lot of times you can sign a Yoshinobu Yamamoto and you still might not get what you think you're getting. And it's a little bit more out of your personal control at times. The same way that like you can buy $1 million home that looks completely beautiful and like it should be really attractive and worth more money, maybe even past the surface value. The same as like a Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Like it looks like it's really worth the investment, but at the same time, there still can be things that go wrong with it. I think that's the ultimate kind of comparison I'm trying to make here from like spending that extra money on a home versus spending that extra money on a pitcher. It's kind of the same. Like the same amount of things are going to be fixed and guaranteed as there are the amount of things that can go wrong and are just going to be out of your control. And you're not going to ultimately know until you are living with the player or living in the house. You feel me? Okay. Let's move on to development. So development of the roster is like free agent signings, trades, the coaching staff, the front office, where resources are going to be allocated for player development and for your coaching staff, stuff like that. For a home, the development of a home is the furniture. Like what are you going to put in it? How much money do you want to spend to furnish it? The amenities, like what kind of tub, like are you going to put a brand new bathtub in? Do you want a jacuzzi tub? Do you want a stand-up shower? Who knows? Garbage disposal, something like that. That's something we don't have. We're gonna have to put one in. Appliances, like the washer and dryer, the refrigerator, do they come with the house? If so, are they, do you have your ice maker? Do you have a top load washer if that's what you want? Lots of little things to think about. Let's say you want a superstar like Juan Soto, but guys like Alec Burleson are more within your budget. You might just have to slap a fresh coat of paint and maybe work on getting some new floors underneath an Alec Burleson. You know what I'm saying? There's so many variables is kind of what I'm trying to point out here, not just in the development phase and all of these phases, but especially when it gets to all of these things. And I think that might be the biggest reason why this made me step back and have a little empathy. I don't want to say this is not a pro owner or even pro front office podcast necessarily, but I strive to see both sides of things. That is one of my personal strengths and something I pride myself in. And I just thought as I was working through all of these different things of like decisions that have to be made, there's all the give and take of, do we spend more to do this? Is this worth that? Can we do this now? Do we do this later? It's all the same things that they're having to think about, and the number of things that they're juggling, the number of variables no matter how forthcoming a team is going to be, an organization is going to be, there's still so many things that they're thinking about and weighing that we are only so privy to. So what I ultimately came down to here is sometimes you spend more on the construction of a house, so you don't have to spend but you don't have as much then to spend on nice furniture or upgrading your amenities. So if you buy a home at the top of your price range, you're like, well, I really wanted to buy a new washer and dryer, but you know what? I think I'm going to have to stick with the ones that we have because I bought the house at the top of my price range. So might have to wait it out a little bit to invest in it more, right? Same as a roster who has multiple players in arbitration years or long-term deals. They're being more heavily invested in the farm system for player development. They'll have less flexibility than in signing free agents. And we see teams take different approaches with this, and we see the same teams take different approaches at different times with this. So maybe they have to make trades. In that case, if their payroll is already towards the top of their price range, they might have to be a little bit more strategic with it. It can take more time and effort and strategy to make a trade than just to go out and get a free agent signing and kind of take your pick. But maybe that's what you got to do. Similar to how you might have to go to a flea market or an estate sale to find deals on the kind of furniture or appliances that you want if you bought your home at the top of your budget, or if you're paying more like in property taxes, that is all the way back to the rules and regulation, more fixed cost of your home. So say that you're looking for a dining room table and you're like, I want this custom dining room table. If I can put the money up front for it, it could last me 20, 30 years. It's a long-term investment. I could pass it down to my kids, but it's got to have that money up front. Maybe you don't have that kind of money up front and you have to go for something that might not last as long. Still pretty nice. And in fact, it could be just as nice, but maybe it's a company that's just not as established. And, for whatever reason, the brand name does not mark up the price. You might just get yourself a Shota Imanaga, though. Less money up front, less of a long-term commitment, perhaps, which should give you flexibility to upgrade or stick with it if it's working out for you. And again, sometimes there's kind of the same risk involved regardless of how much money you spend at times. Spending more money does not always equate to the better home furnishing or starting pitcher. So much of this, though, as we're talking here, is obviously variable, circumstantial. A lot of it is only so within our control, because there are going to be times when you get a superstar like a Nolan Arenado for Austin Gomber and a bag of chips from the Colorado Rockies because the circumstances were right for the Colorado Rockies wanting to offload that payroll to make that kind of a deal. Right place, right time, right situation, right people to be working together. For example, you might be looking for some furniture and find some that's completely out of your price range, but maybe you happen upon an estate sale for a psychedelic rock and roll star who is just trying to get rid of the furniture from one of his many homes, and he is either going to donate it or sell it. And it's the last hour of the sale. This happened to my husband and I yesterday. We ended up at this estate sale of furniture we could definitely not afford, but they were an hour away from closing up shop and donating, or I don't even know. I don't know what they were going to do with it, with whatever they didn't sell. And we quite literally got like at least $10,000, maybe tens of thousands of dollars worth of furniture for a few $100s. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get Nolan Arenado at the right estate sale. So many things to juggle, to take into consideration. And I only say that because I know we love to talk and have good conversation and debate over a team should do this, a team should do that. But the reason that I like to stay open-minded about it and not be like overly critical is, one, it's just like negative and it's not a good look, and that's not my style in general. I think it's fine to be critical and ask questions and critically think about it, but just being aware that there are so many things that you might not be aware of. And that's how I think I kind of want to wrap this up, is that this also got me to thinking about, again, something that I think more of us can relate to than running a baseball team, is how we compare ourselves to other people. I remember in my 20s, especially, and sometimes I still do this, we will never be totally immune to it, but I would get really hung up on comparing myself to other people, especially that were like around my age, right? And saying, like, well, how can they afford to buy a house already? Or how can they do this? How can they do that? How can they be taking all these trips? Like, what am I doing wrong? And I would really let it reflect on me personally, of like, how am I the only person who can't figure this out, sort of a thing. And what I have learned from this experience, as well as a lot of other life experiences, that I think again applies to these teams that we're looking at a lot of the time, is there are so many things that we are not aware of. Like, everyone's situation is so different than what you might be aware of, and there are even sometimes small things that can make a huge difference, and everyone's situation is their own. Everybody is doing the best they can with what they have. And that is a really hard thing to just live openly with all the time. So easier said than done, but I think it can be really grounding and really important to remind yourself of that, and to just not be too hard on yourself if you too have had those moments of where you're like, I want that. Why can't I figure out how to make that happen? It's important to live in a headspace where we can be happy for other people. And that's deadly sin of envy. It just never puts you in a good place mentally, emotionally, and ultimately, comparison is the thief of joy. If you can live outside of that space, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, comparing yourself to what other people have in their circumstances, the same way that you can when looking at your baseball team and saying, man, I wish they would do what the Dodgers can do. Maybe they're just not in a position to do that. And that is to no specific fault of anyone. It does not have to be to a fault. We don't need to point a finger. We don't need to get angry about it. Everybody's just kind of in a different place from time to time. And that's the way it goes sometimes. Okay, before we wrap up today's episode, I want to circle back on our team features. So, if you are new to the podcast or you haven't listened to a ton of the episodes so far this year, Peace, Love, and Baseball is doing a team feature episode on all 30 teams in Major League Baseball. As part of that team feature episode, we're bringing in writers, podcasters, fans of teams, of each team specifically, to help us highlight the team and really just get a feel for the culture and learn more about the organization and its history. At this point, June 24th, the day that I'm recording this, 2024, we are almost halfway through 2024, and we have covered almost half of the teams. We've done 13, which I think means we're right on track, because as the off season comes up and the days get colder, we'll definitely have, some warm and cozy team feature episodes for you to round it out, and we'll get all 30 of them done before the end of the year. But so far, we covered the Astros with Tom and Susie of the Bourbon and Baseball podcast. I also just wanted to go through this to shout out these episodes and these people who have been a part of the episode so far. So if there's a team that you want to learn more about, or maybe somebody that you follow and you are familiar with and you want to hear from them on their team in a podcast format, it is here on the YouTube channel as well as in your podcast feed if you're listening. So we've got Bourbon and Baseball, Tom and Susie. We covered the Minnesota Twins with Sherry, who is a writer and covers the Twins, and Anna, who hosts Twitter Spaces around the Twins and all of baseball. Then we did the Phillies with the Small Hall Baseball podcast, and Regina, who covers the Phillies for Philly Sports Network. We covered the Atlanta Braves with For the Rach on Twitter with a capital A. And that was an awesome interview about her lifelong Braves fandom. We covered the Cleveland Guardians with Alyssa, who is a lifelong fan, as well as Quincy, who is a writer who has covered the Guardians and podcaster covering the Guardians for years now. We did our Chicago White Sox episode with Drew, who is a lifelong fan. That was a super fun interview. Our Los Angeles Angels episode was with Swilly Sports, such a fun content creator. She has a YouTube channel as well, so make sure you check out that episode and follow her. We did our Pittsburgh Pirates episode with the fellas at Bucko Banter. Awesome Pittsburgh Pirates and just overall baseball podcast. They have such great content, so check them out. We did our Reds episode, our Cincinnati Reds episode with John, who is a lifelong Reds fan who I've had on the podcast before, as well as Not So Cool Jules, who is a young, hip fan who lives like right outside of the stadium and has her own podcast and creates a lot of good content as well. We did our Los Angeles Dodgers episode with Clint Pacias, who has his Dodgers channel, as well as doing Dodgers Territory with the Foul Territory family. Such an awesome podcaster and content creator. We did our Royals episode with Jeremy of Royals Rundown. Again, another great podcaster and social media follow. We covered the Tampa Bay Rays with Liz, who is like the vibes captain of the Tampa Bay Rays. And you know, that's kind of content we're putting out here on Peace, Love, and Baseball. And just a couple weeks ago, we put out our Mets episode with Ashley and Sam of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. And that was super awesome. And they've got a new podcast that is up and running on their channel that you should definitely check out. Again, whether you're a Mets or just a baseball fan, it's all such good stuff. I want to give you a quick rundown of the teams that we have yet to cover, because if you are listening and you have a person on Twitter that you follow, or a writer that you specifically like that covers these teams, or a podcaster that you know is a fan of these teams and covers these teams, I want you to put it in the comments for me, or shoot me a message on Twitter and let me know, because I will find them. You know, I will go get straight to the source and I will find people who cover these teams to give us good content here. But if there are people that you would particularly like to hear from, I'd love to find them and talk to them about their favorite team. So we have yet to cover the Baltimore Orioles, the Boston Red Sox, the Chicago Cubs. We'll do it. The Colorado Rockies, the Detroit Tigers, the Miami Marlins, the Brewers, which, you know, I got to bring the Brewers babes in for, the New York Yankees, the Oakland Athletics, the San Diego Padres, the San Francisco Giants, the Seattle Mariners, the St. Louis Cardinals. I think we might know a few people we can wrangle in for that episode. Man, how am I going to do that justice? The Texas Rangers, the Toronto Blue Jays, the Washington Nationals, and the Arizona Diamondbacks. So many good team feature episodes to look forward to. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, wherever and however you like to consume Peace, Love, and Baseball. And we're back. I took a couple weeks off, so thank you for sticking with me. Like I said, the time just went by faster than I anticipated, and I planned to take 1 week off, and I got to last Monday and was like, have I been here a week already? It was crazy times. Still kind of living in disarray, but grounded enough and excited enough to be back covering all the good stuff with you here on Peace, Love, and Baseball.